Hello, my friends. So, here I am with part 2. Part 2 will not be too long as I have since received some more interesting information. But interesting information that will need some time for me to go through it and to properly analyze it. The first thing I just quickly want to speak about is the hazing incident, which I have now touched on in 2 of my videos. The last one, and then another one a couple of months back, I think 2 to 3 months ago. According to some of the email I've received, it appears as if there is now some confusion. And I even saw on Instagram that Meghan Markle's sister, Samantha, said that she was never kicked out of the university. Well, my friends, that is not what I said. I said she was suspended. Suspended means that she was unable to attend for an amount of time. Somebody told me 2 years, but that is not necessarily true. It could have been a year or a few months. So what I'll be doing, instead of picking apart all these various notices and posts and things, I'm going to tell you the story as it was told to me. And it was told to me by someone who was a sorority sister, but not at the same university. So here goes. What I was told is that Meghan was a recruiter for the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority. Then it just so happened that there was a weekend when the new recruits were being hazed or introduced to the sorority, which is a standard thing to do in many universities and colleges, and even in our country when going to high school. Anyway, it happens sometimes that one of the sorority sisters will have 2 or 3 of the new recruits to haze, or it is done as a group. Now, what I was told was that there was a weekend or a couple of days where the sorority sisters were hazing the new recruits, and obviously they had to do all kinds of things, like make coffee for the older ones in the morning, bring breakfast, go on errands, carry books, blah blah blah, the usual nonsense. If you go to one of Yankee's videos, she will also tell you a little bit about things like that, jumping over ponds, etc., etc. Now, according to my informant, there was one incident where some of these new recruits, or 1 or 2 of them, or one of them, I'm not sure, was made to ride on the front of a vehicle, and this girl fell off and hurt herself. Then there was the incident that most of you will be familiar with now, the incident where eyelash glue was replaced with super glue. Okay, so it was things happening over a period of a couple of days. And one thing I want to make clear is that Meghan was not the only one involved. And because I was told this in detail, I am more inclined to believe my source than many of the others. Meghan was not the only one involved in this hazing, obviously. Many or all of her sorority sisters were involved. So, according to my source, what happened was, because some of these girls got hurt, they obviously reported it to their parents, who reported it to the university, and action was taken. Now, according to my source, Thomas Markle wasn't the only parent who had to fork out some bucks to pay for medical costs, and also there were threats of legal action. However, this legal action did not go very far. An agreement was reached between the university, the girls' parents, and the parents of the sorority sisters who were involved. Now, as we said, money did play a role, and there was an agreement drawn up whereby once the parents accepted the payment, whatever it was for, be it for medical costs or whatever, once the parents accepted the agreement that they would not go public with what happened. Now, again, people are rolling their eyes and think, oh, this is typical Meghan Markle and blah, blah, blah. Not so. This is a very standard thing that happens all over the world and in a number of places and on a number of occasions, particularly when schools and universities and churches, etc., or even restaurants are involved in an incident. They do not want their names dragged into a court case or even into a public scenario, be it in the media or anywhere else. So therefore, this kind of agreement is reached. There's an apology going out to, say, the students and the parents, and the apology comes along with certain payments, in this case probably for medical costs, blah, blah, blah. And then everyone agrees that the matter will not go further. And like I said, this happens on a regular basis, particularly where colleges, schools, and universities are concerned. Because unless someone had died, they often don't see a reason why a young person's life should be damaged or destroyed because of a prank, even if the prank caused harm to somebody. And then obviously they go from the standpoint that they hope that whoever perpetrated this prank, and I'm saying prank in inverted commas because some of these things are horrendous, but they then hope that whoever perpetrated this prank would have learned from their mistake and they carry on. What I was told then was that Meghan was asked to leave the campus for a while, and apparently she wasn't the only one. But she was asked to leave the campus. So, in other words, she was suspended for a while, which is also a very standard procedure. I remember in my days, if we were caught smoking on the school grounds, we were suspended for a few days. And then we had to come clean to our parents and tell them why we were suspended, and then obviously we got into trouble at home. We were also suspended for not attending classes or whatever. Or if you had a couple of strikes for misbehaving, then you were suspended for X number of days or a week or whatever. And then usually in my day, we had more trouble coming from our parents than we actually had from the school. Suspension is thus standard practice with many educational institutions. And because my source told me the story in this way, without trying to glamorize or even demonize Meghan, I am more inclined to believe her. It was, however, clear from her narrative that she found Meghan to be particularly vindictive, cruel, self-centered, and very entitled. What she also made clear to me was that she was not trying to minimize Markle's actions, but instead was trying to explain to me that the university's actions were not out of the ordinary. So in the story I was told months ago, there was no sign of sensationalism or seeking fame or credit. Just the truth as my source remembered it. According to my source, this incident and the suspension was the reason why Meghan went to Argentina in the first place. It was a good idea, as she would have been able to earn credits as a junior diplomat, which would have lessened the impact of her suspension on her academic progress. However, Meghan only lasted 6 months in Argentina, and she was not allowed to change her major to international studies, as she failed her junior intern tests and exams. The reason for her failing these tests is a topic for a whole other video. As Meghan was not allowed back on campus yet, she went off to Spain for another 16 weeks. And now, something else. I was also told at the time that Meghan's conduct, interest, and attitude towards men, young and old, raised some eyebrows at the time. I was told then that Meghan was a party girl, loving her drink, and that the parties she frequented were not limited to the campus. I was told then already that Meghan had started working at a club as a stripper. It apparently started as a joke, a bit of fun, that got out of hand. Meghan and some pals were attending one of these off-campus parties, and as the alcohol flowed, Meghan was encouraged to take it off, which she did, and some dollar bills were jokingly tucked into her underwear. This gave her the idea to seek a job doing just that, and she found one in a club in the city. I was not really that interested at the time, but as I got more into Meghan's mind, I actually checked up on it and found that Meghan actually listed one of her talents on her first CV as that of a stripper, thus lending even more credibility to the story I was told by my original source. So there's that. And now we will go on to where I left off in the previous video. Okay, one of the questions I asked this other source of mine, somebody I cannot reveal at all, and I have to be very careful not to reveal anything. One of the questions I asked was, how did Harry manage, or how does Harry manage to stay in the United States and be able to work? What type of visa does this young man have? And the answer was that he was granted a diplomatic visa for the duration of the COVID lockdown, which also makes sense because due to the travel restrictions, Harry, hopefully like anyone else, could not travel back and forth between United States and Britain, and therefore he was granted a diplomatic visa, which enables him to do all kinds of things, appear and earn a bit of money with his appearances and do some charity work, and then obviously stay in the United States until certain travel restrictions are lifted, and he can then travel again freely, at which time his diplomatic status will also be recalled and he will have to reapply for whatever visa he's going to reapply for at that stage. So that is also very believable, and I'm inclined to believe that the source who gave me this information is on the money where that is concerned. Now, the next thing I want to touch on in this video is something which we are all talking about, and we've been talking about since the 6th of May 2019. And this part of the video is from my own experience, and I'm going to tell you the story. It's a story which I had kept to myself, but I've now decided to actually tell you the story. Remember the Instagram post that Meghan put out for Father's Day in 2019? Yeah, I'm putting the photograph up here, and you will recall this black and white or sepia photograph of the baby peering over a man's hands, and then obviously Meghan put in there Happy Father's Day, etc., etc. Okay. Now, very quickly, people, started talking about that photograph. Was it Archie? Wasn't it Archie? What kind of pic it was, blah, blah, blah. Now, I had a program where I could actually run the photograph through, and then it would more or less indicate where the photograph could have been altered, cut, or even just fixed, because it points out all the pixels. And the pixels normally has sort of a uniform shape, although they may be different colors, etc. But they have a uniform size or shape. So when you put this photograph in and you revert it to pixels, it will very quickly show you where the pixels are a different shape or different size. And it was clear when I did that there were some cuts and fixes on that particular picture. Okay, but I thought, well, let's try something else. And I did a reverse search of the picture, which obviously just brought other pictures of the same picture. I don't know how to explain, but the same picture appearing in various newspapers. So when I did a reverse search of that particular picture, it just brought up all these other newspaper websites, obviously, where I could find the same picture. However, what I have often done, and what I did in this instance, is I kept scrolling to the next page, to the next page, to the next page, and finally I found a Instagram page where Google thought the picture looked very similar. Now, as I had a private Instagram page at that stage, I actually went onto this person's Instagram page, and by scrolling down, I actually found the picture that Google thought was very similar. Now, unfortunately, I will be hit with a strike or a copyright strike or whatever if I put it in my YouTube video, because it is actually this parent or this person's private Instagram page, and I do not have permission to use a photograph, particularly because it's of a child. So you will just have to bear with me, and you will see that I have lightened and altered the photograph a little bit, but you will just have to give me a bit of grace and just believe what I'm telling you. So I saw the photograph and it looked, or at least the child looked, very similar. So what I did was I screenshot the photograph. I turned it into sepia as well, and I made it opaque so that it could glide or go over the Father's Day photograph that Meghan posted. And it was almost a perfect fit. However, at the time, my programs on my antique laptop are not that good and not professional at all. However, I so happened to discuss it with a photographer on Facebook, and he said, well, email me the photographs, let me see what I can do. Then I did that, and then he actually pointed out a number of features on both photographs, which were exactly the same. Of course, the original photograph, not Meghan's photograph, the other one, was obviously a little altered, twisted and turned, but there were features on the baby's face which were exactly the same. Even a mark on the side of the head. Now, whether it's a mark or whether it's shade, it doesn't really matter. Whatever mark was on the original photograph was also on Meghan's photograph. So the both of us were 99% convinced that Meghan had used this particular photograph to make the Father's Day photograph of supposedly Archie and supposedly Harry. So I took a chance and I informed Kensington Palace of our finds. I did not expect to hear anything back. Not a thing. I just thought I was being funny and I'm just taking a chance. Well, guess what? I did hear back. A one-liner though, just stating that the photograph used was a generic photograph. Okay. I don't really know what a generic photograph means, but I took it as to mean that it's not a real photograph, and to mean that there's no point in pointing it out, because nowhere in her Instagram post did Meghan actually state that it was a photograph of Harry and Archie. So to me, generic photograph meant that it was either a photograph she bought or she sourced or she photoshopped or whatever and used to celebrate Father's Day. That's what I understood they meant with it was a generic photograph. Cool. Now the question is, if Meghan and Harry had a real baby at that point in time, then why use a generic photograph? Why use the photograph of someone else's baby to celebrate Father's Day and Harry being a new father? And of course, that is a question that still remains to this day. And I think it was Yankee Wally who actually touched on it. And just for the record, I agree with Yankee Wally. I do believe that Harry and Meghan used a surrogate, and that Archie most likely has both Harry and Meghan's DNA. I also therefore believe that the reason why they used generic photographs and other people's babies is because the law in Britain differs from the law in the United States, and the woman who gives birth to the baby, even though she may not biologically be the parent, lawfully she is still the legal parent, and the biological parents have to adopt the baby. Now, I do not know how it works in Britain, but I can tell you that I have spoken to a number of attorneys and welfare officers here in my country, and in my country it will mean that the biological parents will foster the child until the adoption has been finalized. So they'll be foster parents to this child until the adoption is finalized. And in my country, such an adoption can take up to 2 years. So I have no idea how long it takes in Britain, but I think that is exactly why Meghan and Harry did not use the real baby right in the beginning, but they used little actors or they used Photoshop, etc., because the adoption was not finalized. And until it's finalized, obviously things can still go wrong. So they did not want to show the real baby's face at that point in time. Now the question is, why haven't they shown us this baby since May? And we will speculate on that in the next video. Okay, so for now, I'm saying thank you very much. Thank you for being back with me. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for all your support. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.